There's going to be a large portion of the population caught outside the change that is coming. Some people will not have access to the necessary education, technology, time, or even the support. Others, well, they'll have access, but there'll be a lot of people who have access that won't choose to adapt. And those aren't the same condition. The problem is we have been treating them like they are, but they're not. They should not be treated as though they are. I initially described this as this 2/3 of the population failing to adapt because this 2/3 and 1/3 pattern appears repeatedly when we examine conformity, independence, or even the adoption of new ideas. But it's important that I get precise about what the pattern actually tells us. It does not prove that 2/3 of humanity is incapable of adapting. It actually suggests something more useful. A group that's a minority usually acts upon a new signal first. And a much larger portion of the population waits. This is what we talk about, this curve when we talk about adoption, early adopters to late adopters, this whole curve we talk about, right? A minority will usually detect it first, act upon that first signal, right? A much larger portion of the population will sit back and wait. And why are they waiting? Why? Because they're waiting for the evidence that it actually works. They wait for the evidence that it's actually socially acceptable. They wait because people don't like to risk. You know, the risk becomes smaller, the benefits become clearer, and if they don't do it by the time they do it, the cost becomes greater and greater. So they wait until it's like, okay, it's about to get expensive, so I gotta buy it now. It takes a while to build that goodwill, that trust. And so what I'm saying is, in other words, a minority recognizes the signal, but the majority waits for proof. That's actually the core of Signalproof. You know, it's funny that I get this question all the time. What is Signalproof? I'm just stating the two words as they're clearly defined. When we look at the word signal, every definition about signal is what I mean. When we look at proof, every definition but one about proof is what I mean. And that definition points to alcohol. And if you really look at that definition, it actually does still somewhat point to what I mean by proof or proven. And so it seems odd to me that every time I mention the word signal proof, people ask me, what do you mean by signal proof? Or what do you mean by signal? And what do you mean by proof? I start to want to ask people, have you opened the dictionary? Have you looked at the idea that every vibration is a signal? I mean, that right there. Have you looked at the idea that we have to show proof and proof ourselves from things? We have to show the value, how strong something is, how valid something is, and protect ourselves from things that are invalid or trying to take away from our validity. Signal. It is a waveform, a vibration, a sound, a thought that's being sent, a message, an energy. Something that's being sent is a signal. Proof, is it really proven? And am I protected against it? Simple, not rocket science. Yet I feel like even the most educated individuals think too much about this. I think that's the problem. I'm bringing it back to the simplicity, and yet to explain the simplicity, I've had to explain the complicated to people who don't understand the simplest version of this. Everything we do signals something. How we live, how we react, how we eat, how we sleep. We are nothing but signal outputters and signal receivers. That is what we are. The sounds within our body have a language that we have grown accustomed to. We may not hear it anymore, but we feel it. Everything within us has a language. Our microbiome, the bacteria within us, has a language that tells us, it sends a signal to our brain to tell us that we're hungry, that we need to eat, we need to nourish our bodies. Signals are sent throughout our bodies. We're just nothing but a ball of signals. And so it's understanding those signals and how we want those signals to be directed through our mind, body, spirit, soul. So when we send a signal, we send something that's coming from us. And we want that signal to reach a point. But a lot of times we'll get ready to send a signal and a lot of noise will come in. This is the opposite side of that. And this is what I mean about that there's so much confusion out there in the world that even the most educated people are falling victim to the noise. The noise is thick. The noise is drowning. It's suffocating. It's inundating. It's consistently in our faces each and every day. And if we walk around on social media, it's even more in our faces. We feed it to ourselves. People wonder why I don't spend that much time on social media liking as much content, reading, watching as much content. Unless it's YouTube. I mean, YouTube's kind of that borderline TV social media thing. So I can get the best of both worlds in YouTube. But at the same time, I spend less and less time consuming than I do outputting. Because not all signals that we consume are proven. And not all signals that some of y'all consume should be taken. Some of y'all should be proofing against some of these signals. And that's an important distinction right there. Cutting off the negative signals that don't mean anything, and not just negative, but the signals that aren't clear, aren't real, aren't factual, have not been tested, have not been shown to be repeatable. Even if they can only be repeatable in a small circle, at least y'all figured out that it works for y'all, and it works. You see what I mean? Because I think if you can get a few people to repeat something, then something's possible there. But if you can get a few people to repeat something that's not really working, which happens all the time, there's people that force a lot of things that don't work in our face, and a lot of people fall for it. Our responsibility as educators is to help people understand this, see this. It's not simply to fill students in a seat or fill them with more information, more pressure. You know, there is that part that I do agree we need to help people exercise their working memory, but it's not just that. Our responsibility is to help them organize knowledge, recognize patterns, evaluate evidence. I mean, we got to be able to transfer what we've learned into conditions that may not have existed ever before. And I say that because we may have encountered things they have not. And so for them, it hasn't existed. But even more so, we're in a new age that things are coming up that never existed before. And so the foundation of adaptability has to do with transfers that adapt to conditions that have never been encountered. I mean, yeah, it's easy for students to memorize, recognize small things, or memorize the right answer, or for a quick exam and then forget it days later. This is about being able to recognize and memorize and utilize on a regular basis. You see, when people do it in a workplace or a business relationship or a crisis, it's not durable. Durable learning travels. It moves with the learner. So when they get to another situation that's similar, they go, oh, you know what? This is just like this. Because I was doing this and I get it. I can see the patterns in this. Not just memorizing something and saying, oh, it's in there, and not observing and receiving the other signals out there. This could be an observation of body language from someone talking, how they express themselves, to seeing a pattern in how things are delivered and how things are done in a purchasing department. And see, when I was a kid, one of the first things I learned from being a member of the Los Angeles Conservation Corps and working for the Clean and Green crew, they put me in the LA Department of Water and Power. And I worked in the purchasing department. And sometimes I always flash back to the things I saw in this department. And see, that leads me back to that adaptability. When we're trained on the right information, we're able to adapt to the situations out there. You know, we as human beings do not survive through biological strength alone. We survive through cooperation. We survive through using tools. We survive through communication. We survive through memory. We survive through experimentation. We survive through our ability to teach one generation what another generation has already learned. That's how we've been able to advance. And even bees demonstrate that survival is not merely an individual act. I mean, have y'all heard about this experiment they did out there? They took different bee populations, or they took a large group of bee populations, and even different bee populations possess different levels of adaptability. That's what they found out. They took thousands of bees and they dumped them in the Saharan desert, because the Saharan desert is losing vegetation. If they can get vegetation to get pollinated, bees help pollinate vegetation, which helps the vegetation continually grow, right? Wow. They weren't conducting their study properly. You see, the thing about transfer is that bees are intelligent and they work as a community. They use tools. They use everything in their environment, and they work as an army. They work as one. We call that a well-oiled machine in the military. And when you have a well-oiled machine, you have Hannibal Smith. I love it when a plan comes together. You know, it takes me back to that every time. When a well-oiled machine is working, everything is smooth. You could have bumps in the road. Anything can go wrong, and that well-oiled machine will pump through all the chaos. This is why I harp so much on Signalproof, because when we're Signalproof, we can pump through all the chaos like a well-oiled machine. And so these bees, what we found is that from their studying, when they found out and they released all these bees out in the Saharan desert, is that not all the bees survived. Of course, the heat was too much. These bees aren't used to that type of heat. They were dying off quickly. But what they realized is that the bees did survive. They adapted. Larger bees started to die off. A certain style of bees started to adapt. The beehives became much smaller. They weren't as huge, but they were able to adapt and continue the process. And not just that, bees weren't out during the day. They came out early morning and they came out early dusk. And they would do most of their work in this time when it was cooler. Just like all the other animals in the Saharan desert, that all had to adapt to their environment. Just like all animals, insects, all creatures on Earth, humans are adaptable. We all evolve and adapt to what's going on in our environment. And this new change with AI is just a new change in our environment. And we don't want to be caught in natural selection. We don't want to be caught in Darwin's theory of evolution. Only the strong will survive. Because that's what will happen. So how do you get stronger? Going back to cognitive load. We strengthen our cognitive load. We strengthen what we can bear in our mind, because what we can bear in our mind helps us build up the tools we need in our brains, builds up the tools we need, or the understanding we need to use the amount of tools, use cooperation, use communication, use memory, use experimentation, use our ability to teach another generation what we've already learned. That's cognitive load. All these things point to our cognitive abilities. And to not be engaged in education, employment, or training means that we will not evolve. That's the definition of neat for all you that don't understand. The people out there that are falling into that neat category. Now, I can understand a neat that becomes a neat and plays a video game and gets really good at playing a video game, because then they're still getting some of those technical skills. But needs that spend all the days bed rotting and doing nothing, it's not healthy. It's not. And don't get me wrong, I can understand it too, because we all get those times where we just want to sit around and lay around and do nothing and bed rot and escape our responsibilities. But we're not feeling good about escaping our responsibilities. It's because we don't have the responsible road we want, or the desired road we want to travel down, to really feel good about what we do. And I say that comes from taking on a standpoint of a bee. We've got to evolve. We got to find how we can get around those things, because we've got to not only demonstrate a level of survival that is not merely about an individual act, we've got to demonstrate a level of survival that is about tolerance. Our ability to tolerate working with each other, our ability to tolerate the environment we live in, our ability to tolerate communicating with each other, our ability to tolerate experimenting and finding out ways we can make it work together. It's like the bees. They collectively work together as a colony to respond to the heat by reallocating the work, gathering water, ventilating the hive, and regulating internal pressure and temperature. They regulated it all. That heat pressure, that heat temperature. I was thinking about heat categories. Like in the military, when we get heat category 5, you can feel the pressure of the heat bending down on you. It's like when you get in the shower, you get out of the shower and you're still sweating. It's just consistent pouring out of you. You never feel clean. They regulated that. They regulated the thermostat for everyone in the hive, so everybody can be cool. And their survival depended on them inheriting that capacity, but coordinating together, not dividing, working together. You see, that's part of human adaptability, because we can consciously study an environment. We can consciously write down and preserve all this knowledge, share the knowledge. We can revise our behavior. We can build systems before the threat actually gets to us. But having the ability means we need to get out there and actually get everybody on the same page. Like me, I move a lot of times. I'm one of the first people, when I first detect a signal, I'm out there moving. Others will move after they see the proof, and some will only move when there's nothing left possible. We talk about this in technology. The early adopter period, the mass adoption, and then the late adopters. This is exactly what I'm talking about here. That's why confidence matters, because confidence is not pretending that we know everything. Because confidence is about trusting that I can use my cognitive load to observe, learn, test, correct. And so, yeah, I might have an ego because I can observe, learn, test, correct. And the majority of people I talk to are asking me questions about things that they should be able to observe, learn, test, correct themselves, because the information is out there. So yes, my ego is expanding to say, yes, read my book instead of asking me these questions. Go to my website instead of asking me these questions. Because I think that's very important that we understand that we need to use our minds more. Because if we don't use our minds, our brains rot. We get atrophy. You know what I'm saying? Atrophy is not only in muscles, but it's also in our brain, because our brain, that is an organ of soft tissue, reacts just like our muscles. It learns just like our muscles do. And atrophy means, what it really means is a partial or complete wasting away or thinning of decreasing the size of a body part, organ, or tissue. So when we don't work our muscles right, they atrophy. When we don't work our brain right, it atrophies. When we don't work our heart right, it atrophies. When we don't beat up our skin right, toughen up our skin by getting out there and getting some of this natural weather out there, it's not leathery, it atrophies. It all atrophies if we don't utilize it. And if we're not utilizing it to the fullest extent, you're not gonna have confidence in what you do. And so, because I have confidence, that makes people feel my ego. The ego that pushes against the fear that I'm facing. The fear that I'm facing is that we're about to live in a world full of UBI and a lot of disaster and a lot of torture and a lot of violence going on. That's the fear that I'm facing. My ego is pushing me through, saying, we have a way around this. My egomania that people want to talk about is all about, we can do this if you all get up off your asses and start working on it and start using your brain more than following the noise out there. if you start following the signal that's proven and proofing yourself against things that are not. I get serious about this because this is serious talk that we're talking about. The world is changing. And it's a matter of where are you going to be when the world changes? Are you going to be sitting there complaining about what you cannot do, what is stopping you from growing? Are you going to be getting off your ass and getting out there and utilizing your brain to make change in your world? It's all up to you. So if you like, hate, understand, whatever you feel about what I'm saying, just remember this. The purpose of Signalproof is not to tell you how to follow me blindly. It is to help you become more capable in detecting your signal for yourself, demanding proof and making a conscious decision about your road ahead. It's your journey. It's your choice. But your choice, remember this, your choice does not only affect you, it affects your family, your organization, and your community too. So choose wisely. If you don't choose wisely, like I said, it's up to you. So if you don't like what I'm saying, you like what I'm saying or whatever, stop by and tell me that. If you like what I'm saying and you feel like what I'm saying is resonating with you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and hit that follow button on iHeart, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, or come by YouTube, follow, like, subscribe, and leave me a comment there. Or come by social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Give me your feedback. Tell me what you feel. I might not agree with what you feel. I might not agree with you. And I might be direct on how I say something back. And I might hurt your feelings. But that's what we need today. Some of us need our feelings hurt today. Some of us need tough love because we become too sensitive in the world we live in. We need to wake up and smell the coffee. I know that's a lie, but wake up and smell what's going on in society. Because if we don't wake up and smell what's going on in society, we will be left behind, or we will become another country. With that being said, this is Doc. Stay tuned as I come back for more. Peace. I'm out of here.